Live tonight from the virtual Richmond Raceway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to RacespotTV's coverage of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series, powered by Boosted. So happy that you're joining us tonight from just outside of Richmond, Virginia for round 7 of this 2020 campaign here on RacespotTV, where, as always, myself, Evan Pasoko upstairs, happy to be joined this evening in the booth by Gary Weaver, and our producer downstairs is Hugh Luis. And Gary, this series comes off of its first off week last week, giving these drivers an opportunity to kind of regroup and reset after 6 weeks of competition, where we head out to the short track in Richmond, which should be a fun event. We've seen so many events here on iRacing in the last week, of course, highlighted for that Pro Invitational race last week, and certainly looking forward to a good one as we get set for 175 laps.
Now, Richmond for today is going to be quite exciting. I'm looking forward to it, especially after having to run similar distance myself just last night. I'm looking forward to seeing how these drivers take to the track, and pretty much as well as these next 4 weeks of official races, including the 5th week being an all-star race, which is technically an off week, but as well as just a little bit of a for fun event that's happening back later in May. But regardless, tonight, round 7 of Richmond, it's going to be quite interesting to see how these drivers will take to the short track, especially after a week off.
And you can see the schedule there. Talladega next week with the Win In, You're In. That one going to loom large over the series as the second of 4 plate races on the calendar this year. But let's talk about points through 6 weeks, because it is no shock that Malik Ray with 2 wins, technically your points leader, but on points alone, it is Michael Araya. Finally got into victory lane a couple of weeks back, and he finds himself at the top of the board. Jared Bogart, Daniel Everhart, Rhett McBride, and Andrew Friedage. Gary, you've seen many of RSR races in the past. No shock that those are the names up front, but it gets real interesting when we look to the right-hand side for P16, because that'll be the playoff cutoff. A long way to go, yes, after tonight, still 13 races in the regular season. But if I'm Burke, Stanford, Trudell, or Chambliss, I'm starting to think, listen, I've had a good start to the year. I need to start to make some steps forward and make some improvements if I'm going to transition into being a contender to being a playoff driver.
And you see how close the point standings are between all these drivers overall, especially around the cutoff line. You'd have to think, even though it's very early on in the season, you have to think there's that little bit of a thought in the back of the drivers' minds, thinking should probably be a little bit more consistent, hopefully hope for the best, not take too many risks. And again, while it's early on, it's something to really keep in mind, because, well, you don't want to be left scrambling near the end of the season.
Nobody wants to, of course, mimicking what was the original schedule for the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series as well. The last race of the regular season comes in Daytona, so nobody wants to have to gamble their playoff lives on a plate track. But let's talk more about Richmond, the racetrack that settles on the old fairgrounds just outside of the city in Henrico County, Virginia. Of course, 3/4 of a mile in length, and we're going to go racing for 175 laps this evening. So just a smidge over 130 miles of distance. But with having Bristol the last time out, these drivers, I think, are kind of in that short track spirit, and this is a really, really tough racetrack area. We were talking before the broadcast about how even in NIS stuff, you've seen guys have trouble keeping these things pointed the right direction. We saw that on Sunday. We even saw that last Tuesday with the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. So it could be a rough and tough one, and I think that I don't want that, I guess I should say, to kind of give Richmond a bad rep, because this is a really, really fun racetrack.
Yeah, this racetrack is absolutely fun. I've had, I ran almost 200 laps. Unfortunately, haven't gotten involved in a wreck, which is, again, something to think about with tire strategy a little bit later on. But with this track, the exit of turn 4, for me personally, and from a lot of other drivers I've seen in NIS, they also had a little bit of trouble, a little bit loose off the corner, and that's going to be a corner to keep an eye on, because the car just loves to be a little bit tail happy when exiting. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye on, and you don't really want to be dirt tracking out of turn 4 every single time.
And it is quiet now because drivers have just began to wrap up their single car qualifying session. We're going to get underway in just a few minutes here. But that's something as well that I was kind of keeping an eye on, Gary, and actually talking with some of the drivers before this race. You know, how are they kind of navigating not exclusively turn 4, but kind of both ends of the racetrack as well, with, you know, these things tending to be a little bit tail happy? Are they, you know, eased onto the throttle? Something that we saw as well over the weekend was drivers actually downshifting. This is a fixed setup series, just as the Pro Invitational one was. And I think that these drivers more familiar with iRacing will kind of realize that there isn't much to benefit from actually downshifting. So we don't expect a lot of that from these regular sim racers. But again, these are all options should you have to, you know, feel maybe that you need to mix things up and fight your way through. But I think that as we go to the grid, let's go trackside now and take a look at your RacespotTV starting grid. And it is Andrew Ferdinand on pole position. Will bring us the green flag tonight alongside Daniel Eberhardt in second. Joseph Tice will start third, along with Gary Sexton in the number 4 spot. The next page will show you Rhett McBride and Bradley Burke in 5th and 6th. Adam Benefield starting P7. Rhett Nichols on the outside of row 4 and 8th. And it is Michael Laraya and Brandon Osborne through 10.
Starting in 11th, it's going to be Scott McClendon. 12th place holds David Washington in the number 98. Thomas George starts lucky number 13 for tonight. Liam Jean starts in the 14th place position. Kyle Trudell rounds out the top 15. 16th place will be Eric Stanford. Nicholas Caldwell starts 17th. 18th is Brian Chambliss. 19th is going to be Andrew Pelgrin. And 20th place will be Michael, goodness gracious, apologies.
Michael Kuczynski. Yeah, P20.
Kuczynski. Man, that's a tongue twister there.
There's a couple of them back there on that row number 10, and you've got Michael Mosier, Trevor Valderrama. Those are the last cars to qualify. So a lot of drivers opting not to queue. To be Cheney, Nieto, 23rd, 24th, with Mogard and Kamer on the next row. Actually, it'll be Mogard and Cadell, P26. And then it'll be Shane DeParis, Steve Soa, Steve Durham, and Sean Kalis through 30th.
31st will be Sean Kalis. Billy Kruska starts 32nd, and 33rd is going to be Jeremy Rittenberg.
Continuing on through, that is all the way to the back. 35 cars set to roll here from Richmond. 2 pace laps, so a little bit more time to chat about this one. Of course, afternoon conditions. This is a beautiful racetrack to go racing at under the lights, but it is afternoon conditions, 82 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that track temps are about 100 degrees right now, which is hot and slick. And when you're talking about a track as well, Gary, that's only got 14 degrees of banking, doesn't feel like a ton. These drivers are going to have to really focus on backing up these corners, not overdriving these race cars, and as well not overdriving these tires, burning them off early in a run. If this thing opens up, you'll see a lot of fall off.
Yeah, that fall-off is going to be something to really keep an eye on. And that also goes with what you were mentioning earlier with downshifting. Personally, I tried downshifting early on. Didn't work out too well in my personal taste. So I figured 4th gear is pretty much the way to go around throughout the entire track. And again, that tire wear, you really don't have to force yourself to use a downshift if you're wearing your tires out too much. That right front is going to be something to keep an eye on.
We'll see if we get to that point. Do we need to talk about strategy, or is this going to be a race of short runs? Lights are out on top of the pace car as it makes its dive to the pit lane. As always, happy that you are spending your Monday evening with us here on RacespotTV. The field is going to go in the hands of the 2-time defending Full Throttle Cup champion and Andrew Ferdinand. As we say, let's go racing from Richmond. We're underway for round number 7. Battle for the lead. Center 1 and 2, lap 1, and it is the 90 Eberhardt. Trying to challenge to the outside. He actually had the advantage, but now down into 3. It swings back down to the bottom. Ferdinand trying to clear. He'll do it. He'll lead lap 1, and there is a caution flag in the back of the pack. A couple of cars up and into the outside wall. And I believe it all started with a spinner way up the road, and Steve Durham.
was actually David Washington in the number 98 who got contacted entering turn number 3 with the number 7. Tried to move down low a bit too early on, but they definitely did get involved afterwards, trying to slow up for the wreck, and at that point it's just real estate on who's going to go where.
Yeah, just a tough break, and you can see on the replay here, the 7 looking to the inside and just a little bit of contact. Looked like two drivers who just really couldn't agree about the track position down in there. David Washington wasn't really in either lane, Gary, and the 7 held it to the bottom, and it is an early incident that also picks up damage on Durham and John Rana and some of the other drivers who slid into that. So no takers out of the field for this very unique pit lane in which those top handful of stalls are actually down at 1 and 2. It's curved. It slows things down if you're on the outside versus the inside, and all of those different factors. But your race leaders know pit strategy early on. The cars in are going to be from the back.
And now it's something to really know where your pit stall is, or if you have a spar, have them count it down for you and just hope for the best, really, because that pit is it's quite interesting, really, similar to Phoenix Raceway with that curve down into turn 1 off the top of my head. So really it's that curve that's going to be really difficult for these drivers. With some going in early on, you don't really want to miss your pit stall when drivers are going in on the inside lane.
And in sim racing terms as well, these drivers will actually kind of hug the pit stalls themselves because the concrete, you can see where the actual pit stops take place versus the blacktop will actually have more grip. So drivers will kind of dip 2 tires or maybe kind of duck down there for the entire car almost, Gary, to get more grip. Not only just get it in and out of the stalls, but even coming off of the pit lane.
Yeah, it's a slight advantage for it to get as low as possible without going into the pit stalls, of course. On the pit lane, you can kind of curve your way around, maybe just escape going a lap down or escaping a closed pit lane exit by most. So it's really something that's going to be maybe even playing into factor if we do get to see green flag pit stops, but also not that, just also caution pit stops as well, because it's really just a unique factor, essentially, of this racetrack.
And one thing we'll see as well, a little bit of a smaller field, 35 cars in action here tonight from Richmond as the lights stay on the pace car for another trip around. We have seen, 47 actually different drivers compete in this series so far, so missing out on about a dozen of them tonight. I'm expecting it to be a full field at Talladega next Monday. So some of these early incidents will kind of space out that mid to back of the pack area, and I think that's where we'll really see most of the incidents come from. And once you kind of see that at all these races, it doesn't really matter what track, right, Gary? A couple of yellows early, you kind of weed some drivers out, and probably by the middle portion of this race, I think we can get some good green flag action underneath us.
Yeah, that green flag action is something I'm pretty sure some of these drivers are really looking forward to, but something that I personally wasn't looking forward to, considering that even though I did take tires, it was fresh off a pit stop. Right after about 50 or so lap run in NIS, I ended up having about still quite over half of tire wear left, really. But I was thinking, what would happen in the event that this run goes on for so long that I would blow a right front tire?
And we'll see if this race gets to that point. This time, though, it's going to be a very early restart at the completion of lap number 1. We saw a yellow flag back of the pack in turn number 3. And now Daniel Eberhardt looks for his rematch with control car Andrew Ferdinand. Green flag flies. We're back underway. And the 88 is going to big jump and off the turn number 1. So Eberhardt stays second. He'll slice down in front of the one of Tice to maintain P2.
That's a bit close, I'm pretty sure, but luckily no harm, no foul for the most part. A few drivers loose off number 2, but they managed to hang on to it as they make their way down off turn number 4, starting to slowly get single file.
And some side-by-side right there between the 44 of Michael Lariah and the 55 of Rhett Nichols, as the 55 car is going to make the dive to the bottom, complete the pass. Lariah tucks it behind. That was an exchange of P6 and 7 on track, and the outside at Richmond really does not work. You can go up about a half a lane to maybe a whole lane, Gary, but if you're on the outside and you have any hopes of being competitive, you're really going to have to be squeezing and pinching the guys underneath you down, and really we don't need that. 9 laps in of 175, so a smart call for these drivers up front to let it shake things out as your race leaders now try to get some space.
And they look to space themselves out from the rest of the field for the time being. Top 2 runners, seeing the 90 of Daniel Eberhardt just peeking down to the inside, looking down to the inside consistently on these cornered entries, maybe trying to find something that could happen. And he actually might go to the inside, but he'll choose to stay behind. And a little bit of a run there coming off turn number 2, but for now he's going to stay right on the back bumper.
And he's just going to trace him and basically do exactly what the 88 machine is doing. Now he looks to the inside, thought about it, but Freitas drives it in. There's a little bit of a shot, just 11 laps in, as Daniel Eberhardt wants to fight for the lead. Eberhardt, 3rd in the points with 1 trip to victory lane so far this year, with 4 top 5 results. Freitas also with a win this year, only 2 though. Top 5 results with the defending series champion. Had a little bit of a slow start to the year, finally broke it into victory lane a couple of weeks back at Texas. Now has been on cruise control since, figured out that he's kind of got his feet back underneath him, but that doesn't mean that this battle between these two and Daniel Eberhardt has finished second to Andrew Freitas. He'll tell you, in so many races, so many points battles in this series, that even though they're teammates, I don't think there's any one race car, Gary, that he'd rather lose to than the 88 machine. He does not like being behind him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he wants to be the first of his team as well, to try and get that 2nd win of the season as well, as they continue to space themselves out consistently. So running in the single file line for now is really helping these two out for the time being. As you can see here, everyone is all single filed out right now, and at this point it's just a matter of just running clean, and there goes that as a caution is out.
Yeah, right on cue, caution to flag at lap number 14, and the car around is in turn 2. It is the 99 of Bobby Cheney. That happened on lap number 14, and we're trying to get a second look up at this one in just a moment. And it looks like it was Cheney and Sam Nieto who got into each other, and Nieto asked it over the radio if something happened to the 99, but he got into him and sent him.
Yeah, just a small tap. Luckily, nothing much. Interesting that the caution was called, but either way, it was a pretty long spin entering the corner, so that could be a reasonable reason as to why the caution was called. But yeah, just a little bit of a tap there and sends Cheney around, though. No harm, no foul by the looks of it on the exterior portions of both of their cars, but right when I said it was supposed to be a clean run, well, that happens, and now everyone's in pit road after 15 laps.
Yeah, that shows you that it doesn't necessarily have to be a really intense battle for position. You just get a little bit crossed up on your entries, and just like that, somebody can send around. So you can see your race leaders, the top 6 or 7 pit stalls or so, are actually along that left-hand kink, and Freitas into the number 1 pit stall. Going to have the best spot for this. Right side tires up for 2. They're going to go over to the left side as well. It'll be 4 tires for the field. Sexton, though, going to be the first one off as Freitas leads from 4. The 13 car of Gary Sexton, 2 tires only, and he'll go to the point, it looks like.
And specifically 2 right side tires as well. I'm quite interested in this call that was made as well. It is very early on. It's been only 15 laps. Left side tires really wouldn't have been worn down too much, as some of these 15 laps were spent under caution. So pretty sure he is keeping that in mind for the time being. Right now, I think the only driver that stayed out was the number 30, interestingly enough.
Yeah, so if he stays out, Kaczynski would take over the race lead. Started this in 20th position, Gary, but we have seen drivers stay out, and they do it to get a bonus point, and then they drop to the back, and it's kind of a zero-sum game. But I think he may be staying out.
Yeah, he does look like he is staying out. He was scored first place at the start-finish line, so for now he may be planning to stay out. We'll see, unless he's doing another lap just to make sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does choose to stay out here. And here on board, actually, interesting left. Yep, sorry I cut you off there, but Gary Sexton is actually saving fuel very early on.
And you never know when saving fuel may be of assistance. And of course, I guess you would rather be safe, save it, not need it, than need it, not have saved it. So he started 20th position. So he's obviously picked up a lot from this decision. It makes sense that somebody kind of the mid-pack area would take the gamble, Gary, because I don't know if we get 5-10 laps of a run, if you can fall 20 spots. So even if he doesn't maintain the lead, even if he, falls back to around 5th or even 10th position, if you can just kind of bridge this to the next cycle of yellow, then I'd call it a win. Why not do it early on? What do you got to lose?
Yeah, especially because this can help out. This can help out a strategy for later on in the race as well. You really don't know exactly what to plan for during the race. Plan for almost every scenario most of the time, but this is one of those times where you think, I wonder what happens if I stay out. You can only gauge yourself on lap times alone and really nothing else. So it's better to try this out early on as the lights are out. Try early on and see if you can use it later on in the race, maybe for a green white checker if available.
If necessary, 3 attempts at all of these RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series races, but the way that this one is kicked off, not sure if that's going to be necessary yet. Of course, if you get the yellows late, that's what we may need a little bit of additional time to make this thing happen. The lights, though, out on top of the iRacing.com official pace car, so let's reset and do it once more. Same cars up at the front of the field, but in a different order. It'll be Michael Kaczynski, no tires, and Gary Sexton on 2 to the outside of the front row. Green flag flies. We're back underway. Kaczynski no dive. Here comes Farinaj. 3 wide for the race lead. Everhart to follow, and Sexton gets turned. The 13 into the outside wall, and a caution at lap 20.
Well, that went from an great strategy almost to something that just did not pay off at all. He did really nail that safer barrier in turns 1 and 2, getting tagged by Kaczynski, unfortunately, who moved up in reaction to, I'm pretty sure, seeing the 90 dive down to the inside as well.
And the drivers have just kind of listened in to them talking about it on the radio, and you can see the replay there. Obviously, it was the big dive by Farinaj, Gary, and Sexton's up on the outside, given as much room as he could, but Kaczynski, well, he did have a car length in there, was still pretty squeezed, and unfortunately for the 30, he's the one that kind of pushes up and makes the contact. And a tough call for Gary Sexton. He thought he was the one gambling, and instead in the bet.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, especially since he's going to have to stay in pit road now. So at this point, might as well get left sides. But unfortunately, fortunately, quick spin and nothing too much aside from maybe a little bit of nose damage. Nothing too major by the looks of it on the exterior side, as he is trapped a lap down, I believe. So really, this may have definitely harmed him a little bit more than it helped him.
And Michael Kaczynski going to claim that caution flag. 3 incidents, 3 claims. Trudell, Nieto, and now Kaczynski all claiming responsibility, so they will get an end of the longest line penalty and restart at the back. And drivers talking about not getting any incident points for the contact, but certainly, Gary, from our perspective, that those drivers got into each other, and I think the best way to avoid contact, give each other some space. I know it's early on. We complimented some of the guys, top 10, given some space, and I realize that none of that happens if Farinaj doesn't go 3 wide, but obviously just wasn't a good start for Kaczynski.
Yeah, I can see the mindset, though, by Farinaj to get up front as soon as possible, get away from the drivers that are on either 2-lap or not 2-lap tires, but rather 2 tires or even no tires. But sometimes it doesn't help too much to be that eager on the restart, especially this early on. But I can't see where he's coming from, but well, at least for him, he is in the lead for the time being. But right now, unfortunately for Gary Sexton, he's trapped behind the pace car, rather, not trapped a lap down, but behind the pace car, as lights will remain on for Farinaj. Well, luckily he's back up front, and we might be seeing these top 2 battles for the time being.
And I think that would not shock anybody if it's the Andrew Farinaj and Daniel Eberhardt show. We've seen that a couple of cars, a couple of races, I guess you should say, this year, and I have a feeling that that's going to continue through the rest of the night. But I'm curious, somebody like a Joseph Tyson third, or Rhett McBride in fourth, if those drivers can really gain something. Even a Brandon Osborne, who we touched on when we were taking a look at the points, actually. and how he, I guess where he's positioned and how his season's been. He's been one of those drivers who has had a really good night. I mean, has gone out there, had some speed, but oftentimes has not really gotten the result, I think, that he deserves. And in his one start of the season, did okay. So happy that Brandon's back on track and he's running up front.
And it's good to see him back here on the track, especially at Richmond, interestingly, of a choice of tracks to come back at. So maybe it's a little bit of calling, also a little bit of availability for him as well. So we'll see how he does here. So far, he's doing pretty well, hanging up in the top 10 with the lower half of the top 10, but still just having a little bit of a quiet day so far. Nothing too much for him.
And a couple of drivers as well trying to get onto the pit lane to get some damage repair. Gary, that's, I think, going to be the real pit strategy in this. Is it's going to be, the actual strategy is more so damage and opting when to not pit as opposed to actually the vice versa of coming in for tires.
And that's really the key thing to look for, especially with Race Car being 50 miles an hour at pace speed compared to the 40 miles an hour of pit road. That's something to really look out for. These pace laps go by very quickly, just under a minute, maybe about 50 seconds or so. And if you have excess amount of damage, say 2 minutes, you're going to have to really stagnate that or just do it all in one go and hope for the best.
The lights are back out on top of the pace car. This restart going to be with 26 laps complete for Richmond. And it has been a rough couple of weeks for some of these drivers. Incident points and whatnot, some suspensions. Missing a driver this week due to an incident point limit. And maybe a same story tonight as well as green flag flies. We're back underway. And it is a good jump for the front row. Ferdinand clear of Everhart in the battle for second. And Tice again looking from third. Can't do it. How about Rhett Nichols, though? He'll go around McBride for fourth.
And up on the outside, looking to the outside, was Daniel Eberhardt for the lead. Freenar's entered a little bit lower than early on, but for now, Rhett Nichols and Rhett McBride fourth and fifth for the time being. They settled out amongst themselves, and now third place. We could be having battle for third if Tice slows up a little bit more as McBride looks to the inside.
McBride not willing to go away after the 55, and Nichols made the move on him. The battle for the race lead continues, but Eberhard unable to get back to the bumper of Friedrich. So we look back here in the pack at these battles taking place. Some stuff inside of the top 10 now. You see that first bit of side by side is Michael Arias 44 on the outside of Jared Mogard. McClendon ahead of both of them. Mogard the car on the inside, and it is Laria up top in the 44. And again, that outside line not going to be too kind. He'll lose another. And now here comes Thomas George for more.
I think Laria was a little bit loose off turn 4. I saw the car bobble just a little bit on the corner exit, so maybe that's where it is, as the 9 of Thomas George barely peeked to the inside of Jared Mogard, and a little bit of a dive down to the inside by somebody in the background. That was Stanford trying to take a defensive position, but right now Laria almost getting freight trained. He now has an opening, and finally he could slot back in and get his rhythm back.
And just as he gets in line, you see George now diving back down to the inside. In front of this group is the 9 car, tries to get a nose now to the inside of Mogard. The battle for what is 9th and 10th position. And of course, a lot of drivers, big movers, including Mogard. He's plus 16 from the start of this race. He's had a very good go after not qualifying and started back at B25. But Mogard was only about in the teens on practice time, so he's really showing some muscle here up in the top 10, and as well as that 83 of Adam Benefield now on the bottom of Thomas George. A battle between some RSR veterans.
And Adam Benefield doing a great job taking the defensive line, entering turns 3 and 4 that time around. And I think this is now going to allow Laria to get to the inside of Thomas George. And they're going to be drag racing here off turn number 2, side by side. Laria trying to rebound after he gets shuffled back on the outside just a couple laps ago.
And this will continue as the run goes on. These drivers mid-pack not going to be able to get the separation that the drivers at the front of the field have, as you now see George, who was just making moves on the outside, stuck up top, but a caution flag. And it is Kuczynski again, the 30 car around. But it looks like this time he had some help as he made contact with the O2 car. We're going to replay on that.
The one who barely slipped by was the 25, maybe a little bit of damage, but he just manages to slip by through Trevor Valderrama up on the outside in the 0-2. He'll get loose off turn number 4, and it was just wrong place, wrong time for the 30. 25 just barely clips the quarter panel. Doesn't look like it from that angle, but luckily 25 just gets through it. So Chambliss with a little bit of a lucky break there with the C's parting.
Yeah, the O2 car apologizing for that one over the radio, and Michael Kaczynski letting them know, hey man, no problem, part of short track racing. And Gary, that goes back to the conversation we had at the top of the night as we take a top-down look at this one. Quarter exit, these cars getting loose, how, early or, back into the quarter are you willing to commit to get onto the throttle? And the O2 car just got a bit sideways there, and again, when it breaks like that, you're not catching it.
Yeah, there's no way unless you're really lucky you have to let off the throttle and you have if you catch it really quickly. But now everyone in pit road once again, still 4 tires by your front 3 pit stall takers, Freenage, Eberhardt, and Tice. I don't think anyone else really has taken 2 tires.
Yeah, the race off of the pit lane is going to be pretty tame as Andrew Freenage leads them in, and he will lead them out. Of course, it was Sexton earlier, then Kaczynski, the drivers who were gambling. And of the 2 drivers, Gary, who have dared to go off strategy, they have both now been involved in at least one incident. So maybe that is a sign to say, just kind of play it with the field and maybe not sticking your neck out this early was probably the way to go.
Definitely. It's definitely good, especially after what Freenage had seen with what happened with Gary Sexton getting tagged up on the outside late on his restart. I'm pretty sure that everyone else is thinking, okay, so maybe it's not a good idea to take 2 tires just yet. And I can definitely see where they are coming from, but you never really know. Sometimes it might be worth that gamble since the left sides don't wear all that much, but we'll see how it really just depends on how long these runs go for.
And they have been in about that 5 to 10 range tonight. Yellows at 1, 14, 20, and 33 to start this one. And again, it's not going to be that big of a difference because the drivers on the track are all on the same strategy. I figured, Garrett, if we have this, constant stop and start, that we would get to a point where at, maybe the top 5 pit, everybody else stays out. And then the next yellow, half the cars pit, the other half's down. I thought it would really start to get mixed up, but maybe we'll get there. We're only 38 laps in of 175. But so far, again, minus those 2 exceptions, everybody is not really wanted to be the car to mix it up. I think they all just kind of want to stay in line and kind of figure this out as it goes.
Yeah, and I can see that, especially with how early on it is. I'm pretty sure someone doesn't exactly want to try and use up their left sides even more, or maybe risk losing it off turn 4 and spinning out in front of pretty much everybody, or collecting somebody who's definitely in contention. So I can kind of see that. Maybe there's a little bit of worry on maybe we shouldn't take 2 tires just yet. Not immediately, but definitely not right now either.
And all of that is going to be a talking point as this race continues through. The wave around going to be handed out to John Rodden. He is 7 laps down. He and Daniel Eberhardt are the only drivers off of the lead lap right now of the 34 who started. Billy Kruska did take a time into practice but did not qualify, so it looks like he will not be making the appearance tonight in his 06 machine, one of the weightless drivers who was allowed to make his first couple of starts a few weeks back. But pace car down it in this time, and Freenage going to go right on the dot. He is gone, and it's going to be a fight for second behind him. Here comes McBride on the inside of the 1 car at Tice.
And Tice is going to get absolutely shuffled back incredibly so far, down to 4th for the time being. Scott McClendon looking to try and maybe take an opportunity here as they enter turn 3, and he'll slide actually. He just manages to hang on to it, but a little bit of a dive down to the inside nearly went wrong for the 22.
There's a big slide, and it leads a fight back with Adam Benefiel for 5th on back. Benefiel on the outside of the 22 of McClendon. These 2 drivers pinched on each other's door, and they're fighting to behind with Burke, Trudell, Bogart, Lariah, all these drivers in this fight. But it is headed by the side-by-side between the 83 and the 22.
Right now, apparently, looks like Daniel Eberhardt had missed his pit box or something had happened, unfortunately. That's why he's not up here with the rest of this field for the time being. But that 22 McClendon still looking to go to the inside. So we got a spin in the background.
Spinner in the back, and the caution flag is out. It is Liam Sheen in the 52 car. And for all of the incidents that we have seen tonight, where there was just a little bit of contact to carry this one on his own, replay will show Sheen lost it at turn 2.
They just broke loose on the exit on the inside. We'll see here as they go off turn number 2. Nearly a little bit of contact, but yeah, right there, it just broke loose, and luckily just locks it down, turns the other way as well. Just keeps it out of the wall.
And a couple of drivers were scared because when that thing snapped back up the hill, I think they saw their life flash before their eyes, because a lot of the time if somebody snaps up the hill, they're going to be in front of traffic, and it is going to be a big mess. So kudos to Liam Sheen for kind of coming back down and locking that thing up before he was in a position to actually, kind of wreck the field. So well done in that scenario, and it limits the damage. It takes care of what could have been a lot worse, and he as well claims responsibility for the yellow, so that'll be an end of the longest line penalty. It is not just a handful of drivers, Gary, struggling. 5 incidents tonight caused and claimed by 5 different drivers.
Yeah, it's not just one. It's just a little bit of string of bad luck here at Richmond. It does happen, especially, and well, someone who finally may have gotten out of that string of bad luck so far is Daniel Eberhardt, as he got the wave around. He's back on the lead lap this time by. I think what happened is that he had to repair something or maybe a hardware issue, but I didn't see any damage when he went to pit road initially on the previous caution. He stopped in his pit box, but he didn't immediately leave after he took tires, so maybe either a little bit of contact or some type of issue on his hardware.
And that is a part of sim racing, a concern as well, as you need the equipment to hold itself together, and it is kind of a uniquely sim racing challenge. Incidents and internet problems and actual physical problems, with your sim rig. We saw that notably yesterday afternoon in the Pro Invitational Series, when I believe it was one of the Roush cars had an incident on his own, and it was just simply the wheel becoming disconnected. I suppose, Gary, the wheel can come off in a real race car, but probably something with the wheel coming disconnected that's more likely to happen in the sim.
As well, and of course there's also the thing where somebody had also just a couple weekends ago had wrecked so hard that their entire sim rig had also fallen. I had never seen that, never thought it was even possible, but apparently it is if you wreck hard enough, which is quite interesting. So it's just a whole really interesting, just an interesting variety, especially of just what can really happen.
I think that was one of the Taylor brothers in the Monza Madness event that Landon Castle had hosted, and he went flipping and his motion rig tipped on the side. So maybe the occupational hazards as well as sim racing, they aren't quite as dangerous as a real world race car. But if you're flipping over your sim rig in your basement, maybe, just maybe, we need to keep an eye on how we're doing things. But all of your race leaders opted not to go down to the pit lane. The top 16 cars did not pit, so 17th on back. Going to be on fresh rubber for this one. And McBride, who's kind of been the silent assassin, along with Rhett Nichols. Both these cars, Gary, 5th to 2nd, 8th to 3rd. See if they've got anything for the 88 car now that they're on his bumper.
Yeah, especially now that his teammate, Frenage's teammate is not up here really to kind of exactly help him in a sense, because the initial starts that we had, those two had teamed up together to pull away from the field, and well, I'm not too sure that either of these drivers in the 5 or 55 are willing to do that just yet.
We'll find out if this thing is going to get some green flag racing underneath it or not this time through. Pace car down. Frenage is always just so good on the jump. He is gone. He'll lead to turn 1, and it is Nichols to the bottom of McBride, side by side for second. And at turn 2, look for the bottom to have the advantage.
And we'll see if McBride just barely hangs on to it, and he does off turn number 2, pushing hard on the outside lane, and that's going to definitely give the inside of Rhett Nichols a little bit of an advantage on corner exit here.
It will, and that's where you try to kind of reel this back in is, even if you're on the outside as well, you're hoping that you get the run off at the top. So when the car on the bottom gets back into the throttle, could hook it up better than you kind of have no shot, and that's how Nichols was able to make that move on McBride. And now it'll be the Roll Speed Dynamics entry of Adam Benefiel. He's almost all the way clear. He looks to complete the pass in turn number 1. He does. So Adam Benefiel now race high P3. And McBride trying to find a spot in line.
Yeah, McBride trying to pull it back together, trying to hit his marks again, trying to get back into the rhythm. And with this being single file, I think this has helped him out just a little bit. And finally, he can kind of tail the other drivers here and really get everything back together. But Trudell, I'm pretty sure right back there in the number 7, he's looking to try advance his position here, just one more spot.
And now that the leaders have kind of spread things out, again, the incidents have been kind of more so mid-pack. So guys like Trudell here in 5th, trying to continue his march forward to plus 10. He's hoping that everybody can keep it under control. There's a lot of big gains. Trudell plus 10, Mogard up 18. Something else to mention every week is the Doppler Durham on the radar hard charger, $5. Give it away every week. The biggest mover each race, but that is only counting cars who qualified. So unfortunately for Mogard, he's not eligible. That plus 12 for Nieto also would not count because he didn't queue. So Mogard, I think the best of them all right now without that caveat. But if you talk about drivers who have to queue up, Kyle Trudell could be sitting $5 richer, but he wants more than that. He wants the race win.
Now, Kyle Trudell looking, but right now he's starting to fall back a little bit from the back bumper of Brett McBride. And at this point, you start to wonder if drivers are falling back. Maybe if they're intentionally trying to save tires, as he has a little bit of a bobble off the corner, but manages to hang on to it. So turn 2, also a little bit of a place to bobble, but not as much as turn 4. It's just the sloping, really just the sloping of the banking here, just ever so slightly moving up the racetrack as well. Not helping the car handle too much, and if you want to push that too hard, well, we've seen what happens.
It's very, very easy to overstep that line. And Gary, even with the incidents that we have seen to this point, 55 laps in of 175 kind of goes to show you that even if you get just little stints of green flag action with lap times in the 21s, it's very easy to kind of blow through this race and get a lot of it behind you.
Well, speaking of bobbling off turn 2, it was the 10 of Steve Durham on the back straightaway that had bobbled off turn number 2. Luckily, it was far back in the field, but unfortunately, he is now missing a front bumper.
It serves me right to mention that because a caution flag is out once more at lap 56, and you can see the replay there with the 10 machine of Steve Durham. Just as I mentioned, the Doppler Durham on the radar hard charge award. You can see that logo on the nose of that car, and it was, just a little bit loose at turn number 2. That's what I mentioned off at the top, not exclusively for. It can happen at both ends of the racetrack, and that time it catches Steve out.
I think so far we've seen at least one incident each for both corners for the time being, aside from a little bit of contact between other drivers. But again, everyone back in pit road so far. I'm wondering if anyone's willing to take 2 tires this time after this run. But honestly, after the pattern that we've seen so far, might be 4 tires for everyone.
And it looks like it is everybody on the lead lap that are coming down to pit lane this time through, with the exception, I think, of maybe Valderrama, but all of your race leaders certainly onto the pit lane right now. They want service. The call likely to be for, of course, the number 1 pit stall occupied by Ferdinand. Gives him the advantage in that race to the green cone right in front of him. And you can see a challenge from the outside, but Ferdinand still the best, as Osborne went with just 2 tires only to make that challenge, only spending 9.5 seconds in the box versus the 14.9 on the part of the 88.
There's another driver, the second driver, as far as we know, at least of the day, to take 2 tires, specifically right sides once again, rather than the usual 4 that everyone else takes. Trevin Valderrama does opt to stay out for now, and I think even he's going to try to have a little run at the lead and see how well his tires do for the time being.
And it might be a call for him as well to just there and get the laps led, that as well. be a big factor in this one. I'm not sure if that would be the first lap led for Valderrama of the season. He's competed in all of the races so far to this point for the season. But he does have damage, and I think that might be what encourages him to pit if it does. But for the moment, he's committed. He's still out there, and we might get lights off this time.
And for the time being, lights will remain on at least, so possibly 2 to green for now. And interestingly enough, yeah, Valderrama, even though he's not equipped with back bumper as of yet. Yeah, I was thinking, just wanted to make sure, but yeah, I was thinking. But at the same time, though, with this track, it's not exactly too aerodynamic heavy, so missing a back bumper isn't going to be the least of, or isn't going to be the most of his issues.
Yeah, I guess on a race car, just how they're made up, I would rather not have a back bumper than a front bumper, because when you get the front end messed up, you can have issues with overheating, and you can lose the engine. And the only downside of a back bumper is if you get bumped, it's not going to be a square hit, but we're not really trying to bump draft at this racetrack.
And you see on board Brendan Osborne here with the right front. It's a little bit banged up as well, so right side tires for him, maybe a little bit of damage repair whenever possible. So we'll see really how these drivers handle it out, but for the first time this afternoon, it's going to be engine freenage up on the top side.
And something to keep in mind as well, Valderrama already has been in an incident tonight at lap 33. If he were to cause another one by now being up at the front with a bit of a damaged car, the second penalty would be a 1-lap black flag. Be the thing. We haven't had to hand out, though, any 2-in-a-row claimed yellows all season long. But certainly look for the inside to have a little bit of a slower jump because Valderrama on 26-lap-old tires. And Freenage should be able to make it happen up on the outside, but they have to wait on the O2 to go. Green flag flies, and it's going to be Freenage under fire. Osborne trying to look low. Now Freenage slides in line.
I thought the 83 was going to make it 3 wide, but apparently not. Valderrama slides up, and that's going to give the inside in the lead. Oh, it's a huge crash in the back, though. This is going to be the big one on the back straightaway.
It is a big mass caution flag is out, and it was a bit more of that 3 wide action as Valderrama went a little bit deep at turn number 2, came back on some 3 wide between Osborne and Nichols, and it was on from there.
And it was just absolutely on from there. He slid up the racetrack, tried to hold control of it, then Nichols, and it was just running out of real estate at that point. For the most part, a 4-car wreck, maybe a few, maybe 6 drivers in total at least had made a little bit of contact, maybe 7 or 8, but nothing too major aside from those 4 drivers.
So as we pace once more and you get a high look at that one, let's take this opportunity to step aside, shy of the halfway point, and we've got a lot more left to Richmond on the other side. You're watching the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series on RacespotTV.
Coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Brayden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Aloma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett low. 4 wide at the stripe.
For all his work here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
And welcome back live to the virtual Richmond Raceway, where RacespotTV's coverage of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series is continuing, as always, powered by Boosted. Evan Pasoko, Gary Weaver upstairs with you, with Hugo Louise downstairs, working to caution flag on lap 66, 175 Gary, and it has been a rough start to this one. 7 early race cautions, not what these drivers were looking for as the lights go out on the pace car. It'll be Andrew Freenage back to the point.
Now, Freenage back to the point. I'm pretty sure he's looking to get that initial run back like he and Eberhard had earlier on this run, but for the time being, it looks to be Freenage, still a Freenage show for the most part, but I'm pretty sure McBride and Tice are looking to change that early on.
And we'll see how this restart goes. Somebody like a Gary Saxton, who was up front early but was involved in an incident, he's now jumped back to P6. You got Jared Bogard from 25th up to 5th, row 3. Super interesting. But they're all going to be chasing down the fastest man in the field, and that is Freenage. Green flag flies. We go back at it. And lap down, number 68, McBride under fire. It's Joseph Tice to the inside for second.
Joseph Tice immediately with the inside lane advantage for the time being will get at least a little bit of inside advantage here, but McBride fighting back on the outside lane. He'll clear for the second place position, but still Tice barely trying to hang on to the inside lane, and it won't work as the two drivers behind them look to go side by side as well.
There's going to be fights all over the racetrack here, but up front heavy. Off of the restart, and now Trudell kind of stuck up there. Tice is able to hold him off and get that spot, but now Mogard is on the attack. He'll go to the inside in 3. This fight going to be for 4th. And, I mean, that was a really good run that time out of 4 for Trudell. He's not going to roll over, give this one up, but if that 95 gets low like he does as Burke crosses down, he's trying to keep Trudell pinched up there, but a 95 bobbled.
And 95 with a little bit of a slide, just like it was off turn number 4, but this time it was off turn 2, so a similar slide, and still just trying to stay up on the top side is Trudell. He's not letting that position go with a fight up on the outside. Speaking of the outside, the 22 is Scott McClendon, maybe getting shuffled back here as Trudell makes his way to the inside behind the 00 of Mogard.
These drivers, but in the mix as you go on aboard here now behind the 95. That is with Daniel Eberhard. Got cycled back a little bit through strategy. The car who started this race in second position, trying to get back up front. He's got Jonathan Cadell behind him, who's been pretty quiet tonight in the 69 Toyota. He started 26th his way up, and he's got the front row view of the battle now between Eberhard and McClendon, as it is the 22 car trying to hang on up top, but it's going to be tough.
Now, with that exit off turn 4, it will not happen, unfortunately. Eberhard, though, making his way back up from 1 lap down, back around P30 at the time when he was, all the way now up to P7. So Eberhard on a hard charge back up front.
He is really trying to make this thing happen, and of course, when you get a setback early on in the race, you're going to want to try to pick things up, and all these drivers fight for everything they can. As we are working lap number 74. So that kind of settled everything down up front. McBride ended up winning in that battle for second because his single file almost all the way back through the field until actually the 52 of Liam Sheen, the first side-by-side action. He and Eric Stanford are going to do battle. That one for 14th, or actually 11th and 12th position. And Sheen's going to get the spot. And now again, Stanford finds himself in a familiar spot. Stuck up top is it's Nicholas Caldwell trying to make a move. Oh, and he's into the fence. Stanford caught the ball, came down on Caldwell, but they're going to be okay.
They just managed to hang on to it somehow, some way, but Stanford is not liking, well, Stanford's car rather is not liking the outside lane. I'm pretty sure Stanford himself is not liking the outside lane, especially after that bit of a close call. Nearly had to wreck, but a great job by both Stanford and Caldwell to just hang on to it.
Yeah, just hang on into it, and you know we've seen a lot more incidents where you get the wall added to, but it's not just a little bit of a bobble down the hill like that. It's a car totally around, so a good job by both of those drivers to hang on and avoid that situation. As everybody down is chilling out. Daniel Eberhard going to make a pass though, as he's trying to make the move on Bradley Burke for 6th and 7th. There it is, and the Abruzzi Sim Raceway, the SK Sim Racing Ford Mustang makes the pass. He's now in 6th.
At this point, I'm pretty sure Daniel Eberhardt is just clawing, well, he's definitely clawing his way back up, but more so, I'm pretty sure he wants to get into the lead now, just to say that he went from 1 lap down in 30th all the way to the lead in this race, especially after, well, he's trying to compete with Freenage here, way up at the front, who has set himself quite a little bit of a distance between himself and McBride. But right now for Eberhardt, it is just a story of redemption at this point for this race.
And of course, he would have liked to have started in second, made an early pass on Freenage, and just strolled to victory lane. Not how, though, that this race is going to play out, and all that matters to him is getting a good result that he feels like he deserves, and an easy pass to the inside of Kyle Trudell as they will exchange P5 and 6. So, I mean, he's obviously one of the fastest cars on track. His last lap was a 21.760. It's actually faster than what Freenage is doing at the front of the field.
Now it makes you think, what happens when Eberhardt gets into that clean air after Freenage is done, especially used up his tires a little bit more often as well than Eberhardt, who continues to make his way up through the field, who may also be using his tires maybe a little bit more than Freenage. It's something that we won't really know until things come to a head, but you see in the background there, side by side, as Eberhardt makes his way up to 4th.
That's another pass, this time at the inside of Jared Bogart. So he now goes to 4th position inside of 100 laps to go from America's premier short track. And next on deck would be Tice, but it is a bit more of a handful, I think, for him to have to deal with, because Tice is another 0.6 of a second up the road. Doesn't look like a ton, though, when you see it from this angle, because Tice had been battling with Rhett McBride for the longest time, has kind of slipped back just a little bit.
Yeah, Joseph Tice may have either used up his stuff or is trying to save. It's one or the other at this point. But I'm pretty sure Tice is thinking, well, this may be a long run, and we'll see how this plays out. Well, for Tice, he's about to get shuffled back into 4th place now, but for the time being, though, if he saves his tires, he may still be able to compete with McBride a little bit later on in the race. But for the time being, it's McBride about a 10th faster than Tice.
So the 10th faster is going to allow him to get here very shortly. Should be able to be challenging for this pass in the next lap or two. And Joseph Tice can kind of hold the bottom, make the Nani work a little bit harder than necessary, or he could take, I think, the Trudell road, and that was just leave the bottom open and kind of let him pass and try to reduce the amount of time that you're losing or leaving. It's hard to English sometimes. Curious, the 90 of Eberhardt does get down to the bottom, and I mean, Tice is going to fight him for it. He's not rolling over. He's not handed it to him, but again, there it is, and that's what I expected. Going to let him go into the corner, tuck right back in line, so you don't waste time. Because I think Tice needs to be concerned about Mogard behind, and a smart decision as Daniel Eberhardt now has re-entered the top 3.
Definitely is hard to English sometimes, I should know, especially during this race. But for now, Tice for now, I'm pretty sure he was defending there for that short time, just saying, hey, I can at least stay in front of you for a little bit longer than you expect. So maybe that's Tice's way of saying, maybe just watch out for a little bit later on in this season, or maybe even in this race, depending on how things go. All we have to do is just wait and see how this plays out. But now Tice has to focus, like you mentioned, Evan, on Mogard here in the background in his rearview mirror, and also the exit of turn number 2 as Tice gets a little bit of a bobble, manages to hang on to it. I'm seeing, interestingly enough, more bobbles off 2 rather than turn 4.
And that is interesting, because we had kind of suspected that, yes, it was going to happen at both ends, but 4 is kind of what more drivers talk about, and it goes to show you that this whole racetrack pretty difficult to get around. Of course, turn 2 very different than 4, and that when you're coming off of 2, you're completing that whole quarter sequence. You're going onto a straight backstretch where 4 is a little bit more wide open, because it doesn't quite come all the way around with that D-shaped front stretch. But drivers struggling to find positions and I guess be able to keep the race car on the ground regardless of where you are running. So I think that Mogard is starting to close the gap. The fight you're watching is for 4th position on back. Mogard last few times by, better than Tice, may be ready to challenge.
With Mogard being better those few times last time around, as we see Gary Sexton in pit road on lap number 91 this time around. So I wonder if he's starting to either take a little bit of an undercut we'll see what he does for his pit strategy in the meantime. But with Mogard being faster than Tice for the time being, I'm pretty sure Tice has got that in the back of his head for the time being, although Tice was a little bit faster than Mogard just recently at the start-finish line.
And meanwhile, up front, Andrew Friedage now enjoying this green flag run. He's kind of stretched this thing out just a little bit. You can see the advantage is the fastest lap of the race also belonging to Andrew with a 21.468. But he is some 2 seconds now ahead of Rhett McBride, who's all on his own for P2. A second ahead of Daniel Eberhardt in third. He's about a second ahead of this battle with Tice on back, but maybe it is Trudell on Mogard. Before Mogard can get to Tice, you got guys like Bradley Burke, Scott McClendon, top 10 car now, and Jonathan Cadell all lined up behind. They're single file for the moment. But there are kind of these groups of race cars. That 8, 9, 10 group could be fun to watch.
Apparently Gary Sexton has taken this vehicle behind the wall, calling it a day. So maybe it was, again, he did make a little bit of contact early on as with the outside wall, as we see. Ooh, great shot from here, seeing how much Trudell had to hold on to the steering wheel there off of turn 4. But I think Sexton, with that contact on the outside wall in turns 1 and 2 earlier, damaged the engine so much to the point that really it was just unable to completely run to its fullest extent, and he decided to call it early.
Yeah, he did climb back to about a mid-pack spot, but never got all the way back up front where he thought that maybe he should have been running. And it was a similar sentiment for Rhett Nichols, who qualified at 8th position, was really, really happy with his car. He got taken out in one of those incidents, expressed his displeasure over the radio. And of course, that is not sat well with him. But yeah, I think the Kruska, Valderrama, and now the 13 of Sexton, the drivers who are out of this race. Maybe even a Benefiel and Nichols as well. Yeah, so there's a handful of drivers now. We talked about the rate of attrition that have dropped out as we've got the fight. Here it is. Mogard up top, Trudell on the bottom. It's a 7 car trying to make his way through. He's got him.
And Trudell looking for a charge, although got to watch out for Mogard coming back on the inside lane. Trudell does leave the inside lane open, interestingly enough, doesn't cover it off, doesn't try to defend, and that's going to allow Mogard to go side by side here again for P5. Just barely getting the left side tires on the yellow line twice in turns 3 and 4 was Mogard, and the 0-0 on the inside lane. And this time by still leaving the inside open. This time is Trudell, but it looks like he does close down a little bit earlier.
And now we have this group of race cars with Trudell on through. Bradley Burke wants a piece of the 00 Chevy. He'll go down to the bottom in turn number 3. Thought that maybe he was pushing up but just a little bit, but it is not going to be an issue. Burke gets the spot at the line, and now he's returned to where he started. Bradley Burke back to P6. He took the green flag from, as we are now past halfway home from Richmond. So let's take a look top to bottom at our boosted.club midway race break. It is Friedage in front, his advantage 2.8 seconds over a battle for P2 between Rhett McBride second and Daniel Eberhardt in third. Joseph Tice up to the number 4 spot with Kyle Trudell. We just saw him take over 5th. That brings us back to the battle with Bradley Burke, P6, Jared Mogard in 7th, Scott McClendon rides in 8th, Michael Loraya in 9th, and Jonathan Cadell rounds out your top 10.
Currently sitting 11th is 99 of Bobby Chaney after starting in 23rd. Still having a good day so far. Nicholas Caldwell just behind him in position number 12. Liam Sheen sits lucky P13 for the time being after starting 14th, 1 position up. Not too bad. Kyle Kamer 20 positions up from where he started from 34th. He sits 14th for the time being. In the number 8 machine, Thomas George sits 15th. 16th, Eric Stanford. 17th is going to be Blake O'Connell. 18th going to be Shane Parrish, 19th Blake Chambliss, and 20th is Michael Moser.
And continuing on through, final couple of cars on the lead lap. Andrew Pellegrini in 21st and Michael Kaczynski in 22nd. He'll get back at Kaczynski off of the bumper. Pellegrini there. Steve Soas 23rd, and then David Washington involved in an incident. The Serve Pro Ford not where he wanted to be. 24th last on the lead lap. That means we've got Sean Kalist in 25th, Jeremy Rittenberg P26 with Steve Durham 27th, and Brandon Osborne 28th. The drivers that are currently running 1 lap down, 2 laps laps down for Sam Niano in 29th position. John Rodden 7 laps down in 30th. And to the garage for Sexton, Nichols, Benefiel, and Valderrama 31, 32, 33, and 34. Split top to bottom at your Boosted.club midway race break, place where gamers and creators go to monetize it digitally. They'll build free e-commerce stores and help get sponsorships for those looking to build their brand. Go to Boosted.club for more information.
Right now, well, we see that Daniel Eberhardt has finally passed Rhett McBride for P2, and now with just a little bit of lap traffic in front of him, well, more of a lot of lap traffic is what the ADA is also trying to sort himself through as well for the lead. But right now, it's going to be a long way up for Daniel Eberhardt, but he is determined to get up front.
He's trying, and now the race leaders are really dealing with traffic. Look at Friedage here getting to the inside of some of the subpar racing duos of Soa and Pellegrini. He's going to be sandwiched into between them. Now he'll look good to the inside. And a good job by those lapped cars to give the leader the bottom. Assuming those lapped cars can leave that bottom lane open. And as well, Gary, don't bobble. God forbid you get a lap car get a little bit loose on the outside of a leader and take him out. As long as they do what they have been doing, I don't think it's going to be that much of a headache on the cars up front. But Friedage has definitely lost time to Eberhardt through all of this traffic.
Eberhardt just now got stuck up on the outside lane on one of trying to pass one of the lap cars on the outside, which was John Rodden, but I think Rodden was trying to really have Eberhardt take the inside lane as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, just got stuck in the corner, and well, Eberhardt still just trying to make his way through, trying to take advantage as well as quickly as possible, but Friedage does have a little bit of a ways to go. He is clear for the time being, and now it's Eberhardt's turn to try and make his way through all this. Not exactly chaos, but more of almost a moving roadblock for him.
Yeah, now that those cars up front get their laps in, you do see that Friedage is still struggling a bit. In fact, fastest lap the last time through is Joseph Tice in 4th, but he's 4 seconds off the race lead. I'm not really concerned about him getting up on the race leaders, but Friedage, he can lose a 10th here, he can lose a 10th there, just because of the advantage he has over everybody else. But if you lose a big chunk of time at once, I think that would be a concern, as we could pick up the battle between Kyle Trudell in 5th and Bradley Burke in P6 as the 95 car look at unside.
And right now, Bradley Burke looks to try and advance his position just by 1 at least, make it a little bit of a better day. Start outside in 6th place as he drag races Trudell to the start-finish line. That time by, it was Bradley Burke with the position, although not by too much, just by 0.011 seconds. Trudell, however, looks back to the inside for a quick second off turn number 2. Doesn't try anything as of yet.
Is not going to force it in this scenario, and of course just losing that position, not sure if it's really worth going right back on the counter. So this is going to calm down for the time being, and you see that 44 machine now of Lariah think about the move. He's also got pressure from behind in Mogard, and maybe that would influence this number 44, the Profile Machine Products Chevy Camaro ZL1 1LE, to make the move on Scott McClendon, the Worldwide Technology Raceway sponsored car in front of him. We see pit stops on pit road, a couple of the front runners.
Jared Mogard in pit road, pitting from 9th place, one of the first to really take a pit stop for the time being. And after this, well, everyone should be good for the most part on the least left side tires for sure, depending on how hard you run. But Mogard with the usual 14 or so second pit stop. At this point, it's a matter of just falling back into the cycle and really getting your pattern back.
When we questioned Gary, where do we get to the point where we were going to see green flag pit stops tonight? What kind of challenge would that present? And we did get there. The drivers at the front of the field, included race leader Andrew Friedage, about to finish their 60th lap on the tires that are on the race car right now. This race only with 58 laps to go. This is basically that middle point to the end. Would not be surprised if a lot more cars opt to come in too.
And pretty much is possible at this point with Freenage up on this about 60th lap for the time being on his tires. Well, Jared Mogart is good to go. He just came out in front of Freenage as well. Very lucky break for him. So really, it's so far everyone. The thing is, as well, the challenge not only of pitting under the green flag pit stop itself, but also adjusting after this bit of a long run. You have to really adjust from running on worn tires to running back on fresh tires, and really you've adapted so much to running on the older tires that it does throw you off a little bit. It threw me off a little bit as well. So it definitely is possible to just get that power back and focus back on really getting that car back under control.
And that fight out with Freenage, of course, not for position. That is all of these race leaders trying to get around the lap traffic. There is a battle, though, for P5, 6, and 7 underway through all the traffic. Bradley Burke, Scott McClendon, and Michael Laraya. That would be the 95, the 22, the 44. They're all going at it in here while trying to get around lap cars. It is really the only fight right now inside of the top 10. 3 cars within a half a second of each other.
Right now, it's quite interesting, really, to see them battle amongst themselves while making their way through, which is really just something in its own right, that they can just navigate through the traffic that well and still manage to battle. A little bit of a close moment there by the looks of that from this camera angle with the 54. Maybe a slight bobble, but just managing to hang on to it for the time being, especially with all these drivers that are making their way through on the inside. Like you mentioned, you don't want people, as a lead lap driver, you don't want people to really get loose up on the top side and end up collecting you yourself when you're trying to race for position, or even just really stay in line to hold your pattern. So really, I'm pretty sure it's a little bit of a thought in the back of some of these drivers' minds as they make their way through.
And this would be a really, really awkward time for an incident, because some of the race leaders have opted to come down to the pit lane. The rest of the race leaders have not. And of course, your concern is always pitting and getting stuck a lap down. It's not what you want. Is on board with Laraya now. He'll go to the bottom, get around Brandon Osborne, who is 2 laps down in 28th position. And we're almost now at 50 laps to go on the home stretch. Gary, how much longer are we going to see Freenage, Eberhard, and these guys stay out? Obviously, they are right now protecting the track position, because the obvious fuel strategy number would say, split the run to the end of the race at half. But I don't think Freenage has any intentions of giving up this track position and its advantage for the risk of getting caught on a yellow. So that's why he's staying out. And I think 3.3 seconds is enough of a buffer to do that. But do we see Eberhard not do that, go for the short pit, and depending on how long Andrew wants to stay out, maybe become the race leader after this cycle's through?
It's really just a whole matter of really just waiting to see what happens, deciding on when to pit, especially with, fuel runs. Really, it depends on when these drivers have decided to take fuel, whether it's every single pit stop or every single pit stop early on in the first half, because at that point, they pretty much be good to go. But even so, it's really just a matter of time waiting to see what happens, how the tires, how the life of the tires really handled themselves over the run. And at this point for Freenage, I'm pretty sure he's wondering, and he's just waiting for Eberhard to pit first rather than himself pit first, and he's for losing all that track position.
And as you go on board with the leader, calm, cool, and collected, not a lot of sharp movements on the wheel, as he takes us around the virtual Richmond Raceway, still putting down really good lap times. His last lap was a 22.540, Gary. The best lap that he's put down is also the fastest lap of the race, as you see the intervals between he and the rest of the top 8. His best lap, though, was a 21.468. So it's only a second to fall off, and yeah, that's a lot, but at some tracks where we see 2 to 3, it isn't an insane amount when you think about it.
Yeah, especially at this track, it's so short essentially that it doesn't seem like much, and sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is. It all depends on the track, but with this, with the fall off, it's something to really keep an eye on as well. Something that these drivers have also more than likely prepared for during the practice session. Really is just, try a fuel run, see what happens, and hope for the best in the meantime.
And do we see maybe these race leaders go all the way? Is that at all a possibility, Gary? 72 laps in and 45 to go? Or do they need fuel, and it is strictly that not wanting to get caught out that's keeping them out there?
I'm going to do some quick math really quickly just to make sure. 117 laps with 45 to go with 72 laps in. That's close. It's 112 laps total. So you may, depending on the fuel run, really, well, if you really haven't taken fuel since the start of the race, I'd say at least maybe take the remainder of the tank if needed, and then tires as well. But other than that, that really just depends on how these drivers have really managed their fuel as well, depending with these pit stops, how they've taken place. Really, all we know is what tires they've taken. So fuel is really only known to them and their teams. But going all the way, if it's possible, I would not be surprised, to be quite honest. We've seen, I think, predictions back with the Pro Invitational that the tire life is relatively about 100 or so laps, maybe a little bit over. So I wouldn't be surprised if Freenach decides to stay out unless a caution comes out.
And we wait to see. It is a waiting game. If it all cycles through, there was that moment about 20 laps ago where Daniel Eberhardt was putting in real good laps. In fact, he has had a better 15-lap average than Freenach by just a little bit, but I mean, he had closed it into about 1.6 seconds. That has fallen off. He's now nearly 5 seconds off of the race lead as Freenach looks for a second race win of the year. Race lead cars still trying to work through lap traffic. That's O'Connell up on the outside. You see Soa up there as well. Now looking at Liam Sheen in 12th, as he's also trying to get around lap traffic while keeping up to Caldwell. So that white and black 17 is a fight for position with this kind of aqua number 8 Chevy behind. But again, with all these lapped cars, it's really difficult to go head-to-head as Liam Sheen makes the move now.
And right now, just to think, just a couple, about maybe a quarter of a track behind is your race leader, as these drivers are battling for position as well and trying to sort themselves out as well. It's really something to think about and kind of maybe start to be a little bit worried as well, because Freenach really hasn't left this consistent pace. He's been smooth in, smooth out every single time. And well, if these drivers consistently going side by side, it's really something to keep an eye on, something to remember, and maybe think, hey, maybe it's not worth battling right now just yet.
And I was trying to push the buttons as well and figure out, you know, is fuel possible on this, size tank, and if they could do it. But my little fill calculator is not working. So that's why I'm trying to spitball this one. And I'll ask you, because you certainly spend a lot more time in the car on the sim than I do. But there's still a long way to go. Listen, a lot could happen in 37 laps. And for the way this race started, I love seeing a bit of fuel strategy, some strategy play out here. I know a lot of drivers, and even sometimes if you're a casual sim racing viewer at home, you really don't care about the strategy because you're just kind of watching. And for the entertainment purposes, you'd rather see cars at Richmond banging off of each other than try to conserve fuel. But we go way back to the start of the night. We had somebody like a Kaczynski staying out, saving fuel. I think as a driver, even though you may not be the greatest fuel saver, or you may not have a crew chief or a spotter in this race with you like some of the more successful and well-known drivers have, I still think it's a lot of fun strategizing. And I think as well for the slower cars, they feel like it's an opportunity for them to use the smarts to kind of outsmart some of the faster drivers who may not be thinking this deep into these things. So personally, I love strategy like this.
Yeah, strategy is something to really look ahead for. And for me, even during the race, I was thinking, okay, well, if the estimated fuel length for a full tank is roughly 150 laps, I really wouldn't have to worry about fuel for maybe the entire race, depending on how this goes. And some of it was filled with a little bit of cautions here and there, maybe about a 50-lap run at some point, but I was never worried about fuel because I took it at the halfway point of the race, didn't have to worry about it since then, and didn't have to save fuel at all. So it really depends on how these drivers really look at their strategy, because tires, especially here, are something to really keep an eye on, quite literally, and maybe keep your foot off just a little bit on corner exit. Be smooth and slower on that corner exit. Maybe come up to the wall just a little bit slower, as we're right on board Kyle Kammer, who's just in front of your race leader of Andrew Freenach. I'm pretty sure maybe even he's thinking, well, let's see, if I pit soon, pit first, try to jump the field a little bit in terms of strategy. That would be incredible for the drivers that are usually in the back or maybe midfield. If they try and jump the leaders and the caution comes out, that could really give them a little bit of an opportunity.
And the thing is, as well, when we talk about giving up time on pit road, is that something that varies at every single racetrack area. So here at Richmond, these drivers at about that high 14 to 15 second time to do a 4-tire stop as Friedage gets around to Kamer and now leaves us with only 12 cars on the lead lap. However, at the same time, you know, it's taking these drivers high 39 second to 40 range of actual time on the pit lane. We're still talking about 22-second laps. So if you're at the back of the lead lap, you could lose not just 1, but 2 laps entirely and make it a green flag pit stop.
And apparently Michael Lariah has just gotten by the number 1 machine, Joseph Tice, for the 4th place position. And just a quick pass by the number 44 machine, so the 44 appropriately enough in 4th, but Lariah, after starting from just at the bottom of the top 10 now, in P4. So far so good. So some of these drivers do have a little bit left in their tires and maybe a little bit left in their strategy. And while, like you mentioned, Evan, with 22-second, nearly 23-second lap times that we've been seeing, with the 40 seconds on pit road, you did mention, you know, it's going to be at least 1 to 2 laps lost on pit road from pitting. Sometimes it's not even worth the risk entirely of pitting. Maybe that's why majority of the field has stayed out for the time being and not really gone to pit road. But I'm seeing a few drivers just looking at the onboard on my side of engine freenage. I'm seeing some drivers sliding on the entry into turn number 3 just ever so slightly. And maybe it's a little bit of a thought to really think, well, maybe it's worth pitting now rather than really risk spinning out.
And we talked about track temps early in this race as Friedage going to go to the inside of yet another car and is talking on the radio right now after he exchanged positions with Jonathan Cadell. Now only 9 cars left on the lead lap. We talked about 100 degrees track temp. It's actually come down a little bit to 98, so it hasn't gotten much hotter. It's still hot and slick out there, don't get me wrong, but it's not the 120s and 30s like we saw in Atlanta earlier this season. Friedage, as you're on board with him now, also going to get around Kalis. Next on deck will be Kaczynski. Kaczynski over the radio says take the inside at 1. Very good communication between the lapped cars and your race leader. A car coming off of pit road as well. Looks like that's Michael Mosier. So it's not to say that everybody in agreement to stay out, Gary, but as we reach nearly 6 o'clock p.m. in sim time, the sun starts to go down. Oh, and it's Mosier off the pit lane who nearly spun. Now another car loose. I think that was Pellegrini. Just as we say, lapped cars were minding their P's and Q's. That almost got ugly, and that was contact with teammates.
And that was just in front of Andrew Freenage. I'm pretty sure he saw his lead flash before his eyes there for a quick moment, thinking this is probably not going to go well, but somehow it did. And there's a caution from possibly something unrelated as we get a replay really quickly of what had just happened.
There's a couple of cars. There's the replay of what nearly happened. And
it was the 47.
May be the 47. Well, he had just nearly taken out his teammate down in 3. He was okay. Lapped car. Jared Bogard gave him a little bit of a bump and run. And Gary, I'm not sure he saw Sam Nieto out there watch. He's recovering from the bump. He moves up and surprise, 2 cars there. Nieto gets turned around.
I'm pretty sure he was really surprised. He was so focused on the driver going to the inside directly on his back bumper. I can see why you'd kind of lose a little bit of focus, but maybe that was just a little bit of real estate as well on the outside lane. But surprise, surprise, it's going to be 4 tires and possibly fuel depending on your run. But apparently, Freenage is long gone on pit road with a massive gap, and no, that's not everyone staying out on the racetrack. That's how many lap cars were in between Freenage and the rest of the field, especially second place.
Yeah, I don't know if our friends over at Richmond are known for any sort of concession like the folks over at Martinsville are, but I think Friedage could probably jump out of the sim, go to the infield, get a snack, get his 4 tires, and still win the race off of the pit lane. And he does. He'll go with 4, and it was a good pit stop for Friedage. The race off the pit lane behind him is going to see, I think that 5, Red McBride may have beaten Donnie and Daniel Eberhardt to the line. Now everybody else comes cycling through. But Jonathan Cadell did not pit with 22 laps to go and on 95 lap old tires. So that is not feasible, Gary. There he is. He comes in the next time through.
And he does have quite an amount of right front damage there, so it's definitely a good idea to really go pit road, not just because of the damage, but also the 95 lap old tires. That would even worry me as well, even if I did it myself, stayed out on tires that old. Maybe a little bit worrisome, but interestingly enough, now for the first time since pretty much the start of the race, we now have Daniel Eberhardt back up in the front row for the restart. Interestingly enough, I think the 5 had actually gone back to pit road. Rhett McBride, for some reason, I think, may have gone back into pit road.
May have got penalized.
I believe so. It may have been a speeding penalty. I'm going to be double checking here. Throughout pit road on exit, he was fine. So it may have been on entry.
And he slowed down, and he had to give up the positions on the back straightaway, and now he is, no, I thought maybe he was going to come back to the pit lane, but pit road speed here at Richmond Raceway, just 40 miles an hour. And yeah, I mean, I never saw him go over 40 on exit. He was pretty comfortable. So just taking a look back to the entry, like 41. I mean, if he got hit with the speeding penalty here, that was awfully tight if he gets nailed for that. And that is not a call that comes from the tower. That's all automatic in iRacing. You get a little bit of leeway in those sectors. But he certainly had some sort of an issue because he dropped a ton of spots to P9, and he'll probably be going all the way to the back of the lead lap group maybe.
And he is right now, interestingly enough, so I'm not entirely sure what had happened to Rhett McBride. He didn't speed on pit road, and even by 41 miles an hour, that's still a little bit of a leeway as well. Especially on pit entry, with how quickly you can get down to the speed limit just in general on pit road. If you get down to pit road, you can have a little bit of leeway as lights are out. So not sure what happened with Rhett McBride, but regardless, the lights are out. I think we may be getting a little bit of the Eberhardt and Freenage show once again.
Yeah, a lot of wave rounds. The 11th through 17th stayed out to get a lap back, so that gives us 17 cars on the lead lap. But again, Daniel Eberhardt, if he is that same speed that's close to Freenage, now no longer 6 seconds behind, what can he do for a restart with 19 laps to go? He's not going to do much with that kind of a jump. Green flag flies, and Andrew is gone. It's all the 88 Ford, and it was such a bad start that Lariah already's taken second.
And Joseph Tice is just on the inside. He slid down to the inside as well, and sliding a little bit in the background was Bradley Burke on the inside. He manages to hang on to it, but for now, side by side for P3 as Eberhardt tries to retain the outside lane, tries to fight back against Joseph Tice as they make their way down to turn 1. Lariah trying to set his sights on Freenage.
And these final few laps from Richmond going to blow by, so these drivers know how critical that restart was. I don't know who it was, but somebody said over the driver chat when that yellow came out, cautions breed cautions. Is that going to be the case? Will we have more restarts? Do we need to go into real sim racing overtime, or can we settle it here as there's the Nani of Eberhardt now back to the inside of Tice? He really wants to get third back.
They showed me those last 2 laps of the restart and this lap side by side. I'd be a little bit confused on who was which because the cars look so similar. Interestingly enough, you blink and you miss it. Well, Eberhardt with the preferred lane on the inside, trying to squeeze Tice up on the outside lane, trying to get back. He's again still determined. He's fighting for that 3rd place position, but not giving up the top side is Joseph Tice as they get close off the battle, and the bobble from the 1 just barely misses the 90s. Ooh, passenger side door.
And as this battle rages on, if you don't think Andrew Freenage cares, is trying up front. He just down the fastest lap of the race with a 21.366. So he has saved his best for last as Lariah tries to keep him close from second. The action is 3rd on back. Eberhardt now back ahead of Tice. They have given up too much time on that restart to get back into the conversation.
And maybe that little bit of time was a bit much as well. We'll see how it plays out for Eberhardt. He still has to deal with a little bit of traffic, but depending if Mosher goes up to the top side, well, regardless, Eberhardt dives down to the inside, 54 giving a wide amount of space for the lead lap cars. And I think Eberhardt this time can finally breathe and start focusing and hitting his marks with the regular line.
And that's what he hopes for, because even if you're able to safely navigate that traffic, Gary, I have to assume that not only are you going to be giving up time deviating a little bit around the traffic, but you're also kind of getting out of your groove, you're getting out of your rhythm, and I'm sure that slows you down as we've got one car off and into the grass. It's Steve Durham in the 10 Ford. Got a little bit sideways. It opted to mow the lawn on the front stretch instead of getting back up in front of people, so no yellow, we're okay. There he is, slow on the back.
That's good heads-up driving, especially to use all the runoff on the inside available, especially with the front straightaway. Sometimes it helps out as well with all that grass available to really catch something and not force a caution on anyone else at the least inopportune time. But for now, even just a little bit more lap traffic for these lead lap drivers for second and third, Lariah and Eberhard. I'm pretty sure both of these drivers are really starting to get a little bit frustrated.
A pass back for 22nd. Pellegrini around Kaczynski. The 480 note on top of your screen so you can keep an eye if anybody's making moves. There it is there, as he doesn't want to give him up. So Kaczynski going to come back on it. This is a fight 2 laps down. Gary goes to show you inside of the final 10 laps down from Richmond. It doesn't matter where we are. These drivers going to fight for everything they've got. Looks like Kaczynski has got it back. That'll settle that battle down. Again, way off of the battle for the race lead, which has now seen Frinaj check out. He is comfortably now ahead of Lariah. And I'm thinking maybe Bradley Burke, the only one who needs to be sweating. Bradley Burke is in 5th. He's got Kyle Trudell, but a car length and a half off his bumper for that battle.
Right now for Kyle Trudell, he's been hovering around the 5th place position throughout most of this race. He's been doing a great job as well, especially with Bradley Burke around, even though it's around the top 5 net for the lead. These two have been really putting on a show around here, pretty much about mid-top 10s, even mid-pack as well at some points of this race. Everyone's just been putting on great battles, but Trudell just trying to hang on to it, at least bring it to the end, and hoping at least for a top 5 finish. But now he's got Bobby Chaney again looking and bearing down his back bumper in the rearview mirror.
The 99 at Cheney, McBride. I mean, all these drivers is, in fact, the battle for second may be on as well. Eberhard's been closing on Lariah. So just because that these drivers aren't going to intend to, what if they make contact? Again, Frinaj is really hoping that he can at least get to the white flag. That's how we will guarantee that we do not use RSR overtime. So Eberhard trying to close for second here on the board as he's chasing down the 44. Tice, Burke trying to hold off Trudell and Cheney. And now a battle now for 7th. McBride trying to get to the bottom of the 99. It's happening all over the place inside of the top 10.
Yeah, everyone's trying to get their last spots available as it's now 4 laps to go at the start-finish line. And well, you see again Trudell, Cheney, and even number 5 for the time being, Rhett McBride, just all hanging out in a line. Wouldn't be surprised if we see those positions change a little bit later on in the next couple of laps for the time being.
And looks like now as the 5 makes the move to the bottom. This the fight for 7th and give it to Rhett McBride. Makes the pass on Cheney. Takes over 7th in front of him now. Looks like the rest of the cars who we were keeping an eye on have spaced things out. So let's look at that battle for second. It may be the best one left. Lariah to the inside of lap traffic. Eberhard a car length off. This time by Popsicle 6 in the air. 2 laps to go.
And at this point, like you mentioned just a couple laps ago, Evan, it's Frinaj hoping to just see the white flag and cross the start-finish line, and he will be absolutely relieved. But I'm pretty sure Eberhard is hoping for a caution. He's looking to get up to second place as Frinaj grabs the white flag.
White flag in the air. This race is now official. Eberhard, I think, is going to come up maybe 5 laps short unless Michael Lariah makes a mistake. It's all Frinaj. On the back straightaway, though, we just saw last week Malik Ray become the first driver to get 2 wins in 2020, and the defending champ is going to punch back as Andrew Frinaj wins at Richmond.
Great job by Andrew Frinaj, especially with restarts just every single time. And you see there just the ending portions of the battle around the 5th place position. Well, McBride had beat out Cheney for 7th place, but more than likely just an absolutely incredible job. Great job to Frinaj as well. Again, back on the starts and just keeping it all under control throughout this race.
And what a night for him as he continues to be impressive. And I don't think we can be shocked, Gary, but it is Andrew Friedage and Victor Lane. But he went the opening to 4 weeks of this without a win and had good cars, but did not have a car like he had tonight. And maybe it's been putting the extra time in, and we'll get the comments with him because got that one in Texas, and it has been right back to the Andrew Friedage of old. And as we leave tonight to put round number 7 in our rear view mirror, Andrew Friedage, I believe, is going to be the overall playoff leader, and it only took him 3 weeks to do so.
Yeah, I've seen Andrew Friedage around a lot, especially back a couple seasons ago or just around there. But he's going to burn it down, and he is definitely back up top once again for the time being, proverbial at least, but definitely celebrating, and very, very rightly so.
The race winner tonight from Richmond. Let's take a look top to bottom at your boosted.club full race results. It's Friedage to victory lane, joined by Michael Araya and Daniel Eberhardt. We'll try to talk with them in just a moment. Joseph Tice, Bradley Burke, Kyle Trudell, Rhett McBride, Bobby Cheney, Scott McClendon, and Jonathan Cadell, your top 10.
Finishing in 11th, the last driver as well to finish on the lead lap is going to be the 00 of Jared Mogard. Everyone else a lap or more down, being Kyle Kamer in 12th. 13th is Thomas George. 14th, Liam Sheen. 15th, Nicholas Caldwell. 16th was Eric Stanford. Steve Soa finishes in 17th, with Brian Chambliss, Blake O'Connell, and Sean Callis finishing and rounding out the top 20.
And continuing on down, the rest of the drivers through 27th or maybe 28th were still on track. So that's Pellegrini, Kaczynski, Rittenberg, Washington, and Durham through 25th. Sam Nieto, Michael Mosier, and John Rodden. And I believe Brandon Osborne 29th on the back. DNFing, it would include Shane Parrish in 30th, Gary Sexton 31st, Rhett Nichols 32nd, and Benefield 33rd. David Valderrama in 34th position. That's a look top to bottom at your boosted.club full race results, as we will take a quick opportunity to step aside. And when we come back to Richmond, we'll talk with your top finishers and get you set for Talladega next Monday. You're watching the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series. Post-race is next on RacespotTV.
Simulated racing can be awesome, but it can also be kind of a free-for-all. Interestingly, auto racing faced the same problem in its earlier days. Whether it was on the back roads, the beaches, or the city streets, the racing was always fun. But there was always a certain level of chaos or danger, until some folks came along and put some order to all of this. Stuff like official racetracks, regulations about weight and equipment, and enforcement of standards. That's what gave us high-speed excitement, fast-paced action, and photo finishes. That's when racing became racing. The guys over at iRacing.com have made the same transformation in the world of sim racing. See, iRacing analyzes the performance and results of each driver in every race, so you can be sure you're always placed in races where the competition will be tight, and that those reckless drivers who ruin it for us all will be kept in the pits. Not to mention that with members in over 130 countries already in their vast community, you can find races day and night, so you can always get in the action. You can even join a league of your favorite series and work your way up to one of 7 world championships, offering over $500,000 in prize money. And since updates are always automatic, you don't have to worry about software and can focus on the track. Zip up your fire suit and check out iRacing.com.
And back live from the virtual Richmond Raceway, where RacespotTV continuing coverage of the 2020 RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series, powered by Boosted, continued tonight with the Boosted.Club 175, where Andrew Friedage is your race leader. First, I want to welcome you back upstairs into the booth. Evan Pasoko, Gary Weaver with you, along with our producer downstairs, Hugo Lewis, and we'll talk with your top finishers now, beginning first first with your third-placed finisher, Daniel Everhart, who gets a P3 tonight for the virtual Richmond Raceway. Daniel, congratulations on the win, but I know you started up front and at moments there, going lap for lap with Andrew, just didn't come together. Walk us through the night.
Yeah, I felt like Andrew was the best car on the long run. I felt like I had a little bit of short run speed, and restarting on the outside is just like death. It's terrible, and I wish we still had dynamic tracks, because you could kind of move up, a couple builds ago, and now you just kind of run the bottom, and it's all about saving your stuff, and I'm not good at it. I just don't get it. Don't know why I don't get it. It's very frustrating, but throughout the whole night, I was pretty good. I got caught speeding, and then I wasn't paying attention and was sitting on pit road, and then all of a sudden I seen the pace car go by. So I had a long night of ups and downs. I think at one point I was running like 36, 35th, something like that, and then made our way back up to finish third.
I mean, I was as well on the timing and scoring, kind of looking at the 15-lap averages and the 10-lap averages. When we had that really long green flag run, and honestly, you were actually averaging better on the super long run than Andrew. But of course, you had those issues to overcome. Do you feel like if you would have been able to keep it up front all night, that maybe you would have had a better shot at it, or at the end was he just too good?
It's hard to know. Ruining that. Speeding down pit road, it's really hard to understand if I was going to be fast enough. I mean, it's hard to tell when you come up through the field, and you know that, Evan. You've been racing a lot lately. When you come from the back to the front, it's very hard to, you kind of burn your stuff up coming up through the field. And I only had a couple restarts starting right behind them, and them were quick yellows right after the green flag. So, but I was happy to see the guys figure it out in the back of the field. I do want to put that out there. I mean, yeah, we start off with a bunch of cautions, but we had that one long run, and, that's kind of the RSR way for these short tracks. Start out kind of bumpy, and then sooner or later we figure it out, and I was really happy with that.
And you talk about the short tracks. We'll mix it up. Dover still to come. Don't worry, Martinsville as well. So a handful of, I know Dover's about, but a couple of the tracks coming up, kind of that shorter track style. However, Talladega next week, second plate race of 4 on the year. You've already got a win, so you don't have to rely on that wild card to kind of be your golden ticket to the playoffs. You guys have had a good year. Does that allow you to go into a racetrack like that where a lot of drivers, I think, will be really stressed out and just have fun with it?
Most definitely, but you know me, I love plate racing. I mean, it's the funnest thing on this sim to me. It's plate racing. People always disagree with me, and you go back and look at any interview going into a plate race. For me, it takes a certain kind of talent to run up front. Everybody will tell you it takes luck, and I believe there is a skill to plate racing, whether it's real life or on this game, or sim, I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm really excited for Talladega, just like I got excited for Daytona. I think we finished third or second in Daytona, I forget. But yeah, I'm really excited to go into Talladega. It's with the new package, you can get 3 wide and sometimes 4 at Talladega, so it's going to be a pretty exciting race.
It was a P2 to kick off the season for you in Daytona, and it has really been a great start to your 2020, Daniel. That trip to Victory Lane, and a lot of good points as well here tonight with a third from Richmond. Well, we've got you on the air, the sponsors, the shout-outs, and as always, all those good folks. Who makes it happen for you?
First, I got to give a shout out to you guys for putting this on. This is something that y'all do on the side, and, besides you putting on the Pro Series races and everything like that. So thank y'all for doing that. Thank you for RaceSpot for broadcasting the races. Boosted coming on as a primary sponsor for this series. Also got to thank all my buddies on the other click, David, Andrew, Dylan, Eric, Steven. Kamer, I got to thank all them guys. I got to thank the good Lord above, and most definitely my fiance, who watches every single one of these things. And she doesn't have to, but it's kind of good to have a little bit of excitement. My grandmother's in the other room actually watching it right now, and she said that y'all do a great job. And hopefully we'll be back next week and try to bring one home.
Well, you certainly gave him a lot to cheer about, Daniel, having that spirited drive back to the front. A lot of good TV time for the Dyna Machine. Thanks for chatting as always, bud. Congrats, a good finish. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you, buddy.
Your third place finisher here from Richmond. And Gary, I'll continue things down with you. Michael Lariah, P2 tonight in the 44.
Here with the 44 of Michael Laraya, finishing second place after climbing all the way up from ninth place as well at the beginning of the night. Great job by you so far. And while a little bit of a caution-filled first half leading into a green flag run and essentially a little bit of a last sprint towards the end, how was the race out there for you tonight?
It was definitely a good race for me. That first portion of the race, a little frustrating with the cautions because I prefer those long runs. It just fits my driving style. And but once we got to that halfway point and then we got in that long green flag run, I felt like I could really show my strengths. And I kind of wish that I did a little bit different with my strategy there. I opted to pit when I probably shouldn't have, so I had to make up a lot of ground in that middle half of the race. But luckily, my car was good. I had a good feel for it, and towards the end there, that caution was probably needed. I had too much ground to make up there on Andrew, but man, he was really strong tonight. He was on rails.
It absolutely was, and you managed to, in the final laps of the race as well, managed to get back by Daniel Eberhardt, so definitely was a relatively pretty good night for you as well, heading into next week at Talladega for 75 laps as well. What are your thoughts on that race?
It should be wild. Typically, for me, if I just survive those races, I'm happy. I know with my teammates, we kind of have split mindsets how to approach that race. My teammate Grant, he likes to just run up front and stay up front if he can. And then my other teammates, we might take more of a just see how things pan out approach and maybe hang out in the back and let things settle for a bit. So kind of don't know yet what I want to do for that race, but I think practice will kind of set the tone and see how crazy the package is going to be with the drafting. But if I get a good qualifying run, then I'll try to stay up front typically.
Definitely very understandable, especially since, well, there's either two safe places at plate tracks. It's either up front or sometimes a little bit ways in the back. So hopefully we get to talk to you again next week. Before we go ahead and let you go, though, anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to for your P2 finish?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to, first of all, Profile Machine Products for being on board the car. Also got to thank my teammates, Bradley Burke, Joseph Tice, Grant Davis, and Sam Nieto for putting in the work to practice and just helping out with strategy. And it's a lot of fun racing with those guys. And I want to do something different. I want to give a shout out to some of the equipment sponsors that I've had on my rig for a while now that have really held up well. Max Pappas, got to give a shout out to Husingfeld Pedals, Simucube, and Derek Spear Designs for a really good sequential shifter.
Well, thanks for your time. We hope to talk to you again next week. Congratulations on your second place finish.
Thanks, guys.
That was Michael Laraya.
To Michael and to Daniel Gary for giving us a little bit of time to chat with. I don't think we're going to have an opportunity tonight to talk with Andrew Fridage, and of course, a lot of these drivers busy on the sim with all the sim action time, and certainly appreciate everybody coming out on a Monday night. Gary, as well, appreciate you stepping in for JP this week and joining us. And it looks like we do now have a race winner, so let's go down to victory lane and chat with the driver of the 88 card. It's Andrew Fridage from the virtual Richmond Raceway. Andrew, congratulations on the win. Pull the checker. That's pretty signature style.
Yeah, thanks. That was a ton of fun out there. Really, really fun car to drive, fun track. I've been wanting these cars to drive like this for a long time, so I'm extremely happy. It felt like the 2018 package, and I think we made a statement there. That was a lot of fun.
There were points in this race where you were not up front, but it was really only from somebody taking two or somebody taking none. And interestingly enough, there was a lot of people that started up front with you that struggled. I mean, Eberhardt gets back up there and Tyson, all these drivers ended up finishing up there, but they kind of had a roughy road. We got, Gary Sexton was involved in an incident. There was that rate of attrition even though you were out front, and that tends to be the safest part? Were you nervous at any point that you were going to get caught up in that? Did you kind of modify the driving style, take it a little bit easier through traffic? Because it seemed like a lot of the cars were unpredictable.
Yeah, I was just trying to save my tires as best I could if we were going to get a long run there, and we eventually did. But it was, there's a few times some guys stayed out. I was kind of concerned about getting by them. I know some of them are running towards the back and front. I don't want to run anybody over or cause any problems. So that time when Gary took 2 and I think it was Michael stayed out there, that was probably the only time. But we were able to stay up front. Daniel got the speeding penalty, which really sucks. I think that would have been a fun battle. But yeah, once Daniel got back there, I mean, it was just try to save tires and hope we get a long run, which we did there.
Of course, now you already had the win, and that was the only concern. And even when we were talking to the first 4 weeks of the year and mentioning that you had not found a victory lane yet, we weren't really that concerned. I think that's a bit of a strong word to use, but to now have 1, 2 of the last 3, has anything changed? Anything clicked, or has it really just come down to you've had the speed all along, you're just now finally getting the results?
Yeah, I think I've had more time to practice. I definitely think that helps, and I've been qualifying the last 2 weeks, so it's definitely better to be up front, I think. And we've had a few short tracks. I know Texas was kind of out in the ordinary. I surprised myself there, but Bristol, we were at the low downforce, and this with the low downforce. I guess it's kind of we're running these short tracks with, like I said, the low downforce and high horsepower. So, that's what I'm really looking. That's my style. So I would say that's what I contribute the success to.
It is Talladega week on iRacing, from everything from the official racing to the replacement series, Saturday Night Thunder, the Pro Invitational, and that'll include next Monday night, the RealSimRacing Cup Series. So what's the outlook onto a plate track with, what I had mentioned to Daniel when I talked with him here post-race, that he's got to win, so he doesn't have to be nervous. You don't kind of have to bank on maybe this being your one best opportunity to get a playoff spot. You don't also have to worry about not finishing last. You can kind of go out there and race for it. So you feeling loose going into the second plate race of the year?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say loose. Talladega is always stressful. It add a few years to or take away a few years from your life. So I just go out there with no expectations. Expect to finish last upside down on lap 2. And if you expect that, anything better is an accomplishment. So I just go in there. I don't like plate tracks at all. So I just kind of look past it. Excited to go to Dover in a few weeks.
We look forward to that one, and it'll be Martinsville after as well. So a couple of those shorter tracks as well before we see some of the bigger ones back in the middle portion of the year. Andrew, the long night, long hard fought win. What do you want to say hi to while we've got you?
Yeah, just want to say thanks to all the fans for watching. I hope we gave some entertainment, especially at the times this world's in. Just everybody for watching. You guys for broadcast and for admin, and you guys do a great job. I've been here a long time, and you're probably the best in the business. So all the teammates on Lowline Racing and everybody else that helps out, David Washington, wouldn't be here, and all the drivers in this league. That was fun coming through lap traffic. Everybody gave room. Everybody was respectful, and once we got going, that was a heck of a race.
It really was. And happy that you're a part of all of this on a Monday night, Andrew. We appreciate you chatting again. Congrats on the win.
Thanks so much. Have a good week, guys.
Race winner tonight for the virtual Richmond Raceway, as the virtual stands were packed tonight for the Boosted Club 175. And Gary, certainly a fun event, and we look forward to Talladega next week. But as I was saying before we got on the radio with the driver of the 88, thanks for jumping into the broadcast booth tonight and calling another RSR race for the first time in a little bit. Happy to have you a part of the action with us. And of course, we go to a very different racetrack in Talladega. What are your thoughts on the plate racing, not only in the context of RSR next Monday, but for everybody who's going to be racing there this week on the service?
I am very nervous for next week, to be quite honest, or even this week in general. I'm pretty sure there's always at some point, I always look forward to Talladega, but there's also this nagging thought in the back of my mind thinking, this is not going to be a fun week at some point or another, because, well, Talladega is absolutely incredible. I absolutely enjoy plate racing sometimes, and we all know the other times that no one enjoys racing, and that's usually when everyone gets involved in the ever so famed and the ever so well known big one, essentially. So it's something that's really just kind of scary almost, but at the same time it's also something that's you like the risk. Either you do it or you don't. And well, I ran Daytona, so I might as well run Talladega as well. It's something that Go ahead.
I was just going to say as well, I mean, even as, somebody that doesn't drive the sim much at all, I can get into Talladega because you talk about the great equalizer. It opens things up to where, I think more people have a shot at winning. But to Daniel's point, it's not like the good guys, have no advantage. I mean, there's still strategy. You still have to be really good at the bump drafting and being smart. And if you got pit stops, I mean, it's not a total wild card because... you obviously still have to practice. And I think that the drafting is going to be the biggest part. And of course, you can only go out there and do so many laps on your own in Talladega. It's going to come down to, I think, executing. And that's still where the veterans have an advantage. I don't think they're totally wiped, off of that pedestal.
Oh, yeah, not at all. I mean, I've been on iRacing for double-checking now nearly 7 years at this point, and I am still... I'm still nervous about getting bump drafted. I'm fine with bump drafting. I'm fine being the pusher to push someone up to the front, but being someone who's bump drafted, running the inside lane, sometimes being squeezed down, sometimes it is a little bit nerve-wracking. So I'm pretty sure that even if some people who are very experienced, it's a little bit maybe it's a little bit of a thought. But of course, that's what we mentioned. That's where practice does come into play. That's where everyone can really double check themselves, make sure that they know who to run. They know who they're running with. Even the drivers that aren't on their teams, that are on their teams. It's really something that everyone just would love practice for, I'm sure, especially during this week being Talladega week, essentially.
Yeah, and basically, by the time it gets to next Monday, that's going to be the last race at Dega because it's already starting here on the iRacing service. And we look forward to that next time out. But until then, that'll actually do it for us here tonight for the virtual Richmond Raceway as round number 7 falls into our rear view mirror. But thank you for tuning in on behalf of the entire team at RSR and as well as at RacespotTV for your broadcast crew tonight. For our producer downstairs, who always for Gary Weaver and myself, Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Andrew Ferdinand. We are back next Monday, April 27th. It is a 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time start from Talladega. That race and every race of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series powered by Boosted can be found right here on RaceSpot TV. Until next time, good night from Richmond.